right, ladies and gentlemen, we bring you the Jimmy Doan Show. This is Counselor Curtis.
And this is Jimmy Doan.
That's right, we are live. This is YouTube. You could be watching us on YouTube.
Assuming my modem doesn't fake out like it does.
Either way, if you start to get the stream, you don't get a great copy, we'll have a new one up there in a few minutes. So, thank you for joining us. Today is the 17th of October, 2018.
And this is a Wednesday. We normally come 4 o'clock on Wednesdays and Sundays. 4 o'clock Eastern Time.
That's right. So what's happening?
Well, lots.
Lots is happening.
Well, it's interesting. There's continuation of stuff.
Yeah.
But before I get to that,
Okay.
there were 2 notable deaths this week. Dennis Hoff.
Uh-huh.
He died young. He was
the Bunny Ranch guy.
The Bunny Ranch. He owned apparently several of the houses of ill repute in Las Vegas. They owned about 4 or 5 of them, I think. He was only 66 years old.
Right.
And I think he was about that old, but he croaked.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd been running as a libertarian, and he actually, in a very Republican district out there, apparently had a pretty good chance of winning.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever his rural district in Nevada was.
Right.
So that's gone, and they don't know what's going to happen now. Is apparently whoever he was running against was an anti-prostitution person, I think.
No.
Yeah, in that area, if you can imagine, right? Put them all out of work.
Probably a Mormon or something.
Yeah, well,
or you can't say that.
I think it was a girl. I'm not sure, which is interesting. An ex escort. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Whatever. And the other one, of course, is Bill Allen.
Well, and they say that nobody ever died wishing they'd spent more time at work, but maybe that guy was an exception.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, he'd done pretty well. Apparently, he bought the ranches up and everything out there.
Uh-huh.
And Bill Allen.
Yeah.
Co-founder of Microsoft.
Yeah.
Worth $20 billion when he died.
Not too shabby.
No, but can't take it with you.
No. But what you can do is you can spend it. You can philanthropize with it.
Well, apparently last year, according to some record, he gave away $100 million, which is a drop in the bucket. That's not even that's pocket change,
right?
Yeah, for him. But so you don't know. You can bet that Uncle Sam's going to try and swoop in on some of that.
Oh, sure. They'll try and get their 10 out of it. Their 10 B's. But he was married, right? And did he have any kids?
To be honest with you, I forget. I think he was and did, yeah.
Right, so...
I mean, it seems only reasonable that the guy would have made some arrangements for trusts of some kind.
Sure. And usually what happens is that money gets distributed over a couple of generations.
Yeah, it does anyway, yeah.
Philanthropy.
As they say, it's shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. I can attest to that.
Well, I mean, there's no way, he can't guarantee that he's going to have his kid as brilliant as he is. So what is he supposed to do? I mean, and you give it away, and that's what's great about it. I mean, that's an American hero story from the standpoint of here's a guy who creates $20 billion out of thin air.
Yeah,
and now it goes back. It just,
well, as I say, eventually it's going to, the government's going to get it all anyways at some point over the next couple of generations.
Not even the government. I mean, it could be given out to private institutions.
Well, but they're going to pay taxes.
I mean, sure.
I mean, what I'm saying is the government, of course, never wants to wait. And of course, the money's already been taxed once anyway, and it's invested, of course, in some other money-generating, Seahawks and all that stuff. The death tax, of course, is interesting because people are going to jump on this and say, well, nobody should get that kind of money, and of course, my answer to that is everybody should.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? What's wrong with that? So anyway, co-founder of and died young of lymphonic cancer, I think, or something like that. It came back. He'd had some cancer problems, I think, in the past, but whatever. And all the money in the world couldn't save.
Yeah, I mean, guess we know there's no cure for that, right?
Well, I'll tell you, he would have pulled out all the stops for it. Now, speaking of deaths, Roseanne. Nearly 6 months after Roseanne ended its initial revival run and the volatile Roseanne bar crashed the now canceled show, the Connors now premiered last night. I think it was either last night or the night before, in hopes of turning tragedy into triumph, or at least a solid success. Well, of course, Roseanne wasn't there,
Right.
so they had to kill her off.
Right.
So, notable death. Guess how she died?
Yeah, I saw this.
Did you? Opioid.
Accidental overdose.
Yeah, well, was it accidental?
Yeah, the neighbor gave her some pills.
Okay. And opioid overdose. So they set the stage for now the 10 episode runoff. Now, interestingly enough, the audience share, while okay, was not anything like, it was 35% off from what it had been.
Yeah.
But it was like number 7 or 8 or 9 or something.
And I guarantee you half or 2/3 of these people tuned
Next
in just
week
to see what exactly.
You know, there's no question.
I know.
The people that tuned in, yeah. I mean, I was reading some of the comments, and there were a bunch of people.
You can't do it. Look, she's the genius of the show. And look, I know they have awesome comics as writer. I think Norm Macdonald's a writer, and who's that other black girl who writes Wanda Sykes.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so I mean they've got good people who know what they're doing, but you just don't take out your number one star.
No,
I mean,
no.
just-
And of course, yeah. And of course, I would guess now that it's probably become a little more liberal without the.
Oh my God! Well, just the storyline itself is.
It's destroyed. But the old one, the old storyline, which she's wearing a Trump T-shirt and everything.
Oh, well, yeah.
That's gone.
I didn't know that she did that in the story and stuff.
I think she was a big Trump. I think she wore a Trump shirt or something.
That's even better.
Yeah,
but
I could be wrong, but I mean, it was obvious that she was a Trump supporter.
Right. Well, and that's the way it should have been written. So I'm glad that they did that. To me, this is. The storyline, the new storyline is unaffordable medical care.
Okay.
That's how she died. She couldn't afford her so she borrowed the pills from the next door neighbor.
Okay. Well, isn't that sweet?
Yeah, exactly. This is
right. Well,
a little Medicare for all.
A little
push.
Medicare for all push, right? Well, I did not. That's good. I did not know that. Well, it's going to be interesting to see next week. What the ratings are going to look like.
Well, you're not going to be able to because it'll be canceled by next week, man. Come on, man.
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry,
you could see if the ratings, drop into the single digits or lower.
It's just, it's like having All in the Family without Archie Bunker.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
No, you can't do it.
No,
it does not fly.
No.
Sorry.
So
it sucks that they crucified her on the altar. Also, they ate her lunch and people don't know and I didn't know this about her. She has some actually legit mental health issues.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt. I mean, that's what I heard too.
She was hospitalized at one time after a car accident where she had a brain injury.
Right.
So I mean, there is you can't punish somebody with the destruction of their career over a tweet. Because of
they've done it before. I
know.
I mean, it happens all the time. How about that one girl that was flying to South Africa?
Oh yeah, that poor girl. But she didn't even have a career beforehand. I mean, she was made and broken in the same flight.
That's right.
But Roseanne now, and of course Roseanne, I think she'll bounce back. I hope somebody. There's got to be.
She's going to. Look, she's too smart not to bounce back. I mean, if Kathy Griffin can bounce back, then anybody can just about.
Well, yeah, I think she's a better comic.
There's no question, no question about it. But I'm saying that she's on Kathy Griffin now is on a worldwide tour. Stand up, sold out places, whatever it is. So she's, it all blew over, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
As it should. Jokes. I mean, jokes. God, whatever you do, leave the jokes are sacred.
Yeah.
Even the king has a jester which sits there and points out to him. It's like
even the king has a jester. That's right.
All right.
Okay, so now our neighbors to the north.
Yes.
As of today is
it's Smoke 'em Up Day.
That's right. If you got 'em, smoke 'em.
Canada goes green.
It becomes the first major industrialized country after, I guess, one
Canada?
of our.
After California?
No. Industrialized country. After, of course, one of our South American, starts with a U, also is legalized it, as has Portugal.
Uruguay?
Yeah, Uruguay, I think, and Portugal, I think, have. But they're not major industrialized countries. Canada, of course, Canada becomes the first major industrialized country to fully decriminalize cannabis for recreational use. Now this starts like today.
Right.
And
already Canada's off the rails. It's
right. Well, I mean, one of the things that you might see is the
whole country shut down.
No, it's not that. It's not that. It's just you'll see the mass migrations as the Hondurans and everybody else go through the United States,
Yeah, right.
and go to Canada, because that's where the massive influx in Canada, can be rather interesting. Now, I've got a couple of little notes here, but it turns out that Canada has provinces, as you know. I forget how many. I'm not up on it, but it's got a half a dozen or more, and they're all apparently independent, like our states. They have independent rules on who can do what, and of course, concerns abound. Already, there are worries about a shortage of legal cannabis for sale in the early months of legalization. So, so there's going to be a black market. It looks like for a while as people get it. And so it will no longer be illegal for adults to purchase, possess, or grow recreational cannabis starting today. In Ontario and the western provinces, the sale of cannabis is left largely to licensed privately operated retail outlets, but in Quebec and most eastern Canadian provinces, marijuana will be sold in state-run stores, which of course means the price goes up, that kind of stuff. So the only way to buy in Ontario, the most populous province, the only way to buy legal pot as of today will be by mail order, because permits for private outlets are not expected to be issued until next spring, after recently elected Premier Doug Ford decided to reverse earlier plans to sell cannabis through government-owned stores. So I'm not sure what that is, but it's interesting that it's going to take them 6 months to get the permits.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think somebody could go back in the back room and issue the permit.
Yeah.
Tomorrow morning.
Come on, man.
Yeah, come on, right.
Stamp them out.
Well,
as you said, it's a big. Look, this is a money grab. This is a big. We got to set the bureaucracy in place. We got to get the money changers in there. We got to get the laminators and the picture takers and the categorizers. Everybody there, so that when they start selling this stuff, they can collect their cash.
Yeah. And of course, that's what's happened in, I guess to some extent in California, is that the taxes are so high that the black market is still.
Well, as we talked about on a couple of our shows, they did a huge wave, a big administrative wave, which regulated and cut back on like 50% of their growth, and just a devastating regulatory wave that is absolutely, like you said, a boon to the black market, because it just reinvigorates the whole thing.
Right.
I mean, it's
well,
amazing.
that's what, you think about it. When you think about it, of course, it is fascinating. Gambling is another one of those things. For instance, as anybody will tell you, you watch the lotto ads, for instance. I've talked about this before. The expected rate of return is 33 cents on the dollar. If you gamble, in other words, in the long haul, you do the lotto, the $1 lotto, 1,000 times, you're going to get $333 back. Is what it is. That's the long-term expected value. Interestingly enough, the runners, the numbers runners, that a lot of people that I remember when I was growing up, my nanny used to play the numbers almost every day. And it was what it is. What you do is you pick. It's three numbers. It's out of from 1 to 1,000, 1 to 999, and you three numbers. And I forget what it is. I think it was the last three numbers of the closing Dow, or something like that. So that was pretty much random. But the payoff was 66%. That is so. But what I'm saying is, if you bet a dollar. Every time you bet a dollar, your expected rate of return was 66 cents. But of course, what would happen is on the day that your three numbers would hit, you'd get hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
And so, but in the long haul, of course. So, but my point is, the Florida lottery doesn't even do as good as the illegal number runners.
No, illegal.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They
that's the only way. The only way that
this
Florida lotto can survive is to outlaw.
Right.
The other guys.
Right. This is another one of those areas. So we have gambling, alcohol, and of course it'll be marijuana, and these are areas where the government feels like, well, they're so valuable, we're going to go ahead and get in.
Education. It's illegal not to educate your child, of course.
Well, right. Well, but they haven't outlawed other schools yet.
No.
Yet.
Although they do regulate them.
Well, and as you talked about before, the more they get their claws in there, and that's part of what I'm getting at is what they don't understand is that by having their own system and crowding out the actual market.
Crowding out is right. They co-opt the private sector.
And what happens is a black market seeps back in.
Right.
So you can crowd out the legitimate regular free market people and stuff, but you'll get a criminal element that will come back in that will run those systems and for the market, and it's detrimental on so many levels, and they don't see that. They just see, well, we're just regulating this.
Well, they also don't see, it's interesting, they never take into account that when they do anything, that the populace behavior will change. It will adjust almost instantaneously to any new regulations.
Right. This is one of those areas, and I'm saying that they've adjusted it so far that there's a backlash. There's a black market, a counter black market. There, one of the awesome benefits we were hoping to get in California by the legalization of drugs. The whole point, or not the whole point, but arguably the largest benefit was the devastation of the black market. That is, it was going to undermine the profits of the killers that are operating just over the border in those Mexican towns and controlling their elections and all kinds of things. And instead, by placing heavy-handed regulations on there, they've allowed that black market to continue to live. And it's unfortunate, and it's just
it's tragic because it would have been so easy to have a very light hand just to collect a little bit of money. But they can't. The problem is that when they see that money flowing, they can't keep their hands off of it.
Well, California got involved with kind of a light hand at first. And then they looked at Florida, got in with like the heaviest squeeze, like the glove, the gauntlet of steel hand. And then other people were like, wait a minute, they're making a ton of cash over there somehow, so we want some of that.
Well, it's interesting that they don't think that the behavior of normal people will change. And as I said this before, when gas prices go up, a nickel or a dime here, people's it changes instantaneously. I mean, they'll go across the street to save a nickel. So it's just that quick. Okay, next item that I've got here, President Donald Trump reignited his controversial criticism of the central bank on Tuesday, calling the Federal Reserve his biggest threat. Trump followed a previous strong text of the Fed by complaining, again, that interest rates are rising too quickly. Now, one of the things is, it is true that the Federal Reserve is his biggest threat. There's no question. And maybe he understands why. But the fact is that interest rates are too low, and in order to wring the inflation out of this economy, it should have been done a long time ago, the same way that Volcker did it in the late 70s and early 80s, right at the beginning of the Reagan administration, when we had the worst depression since the Depression, during the first 2 years of Reagan. It rang out, it's got all the malinvestments were wrung out of the economy, and that's when it took off, and that's one of the reasons that Reagan had to, this unbelievable landslide in 1984, because it took 2 years for everybody to wring it all out, and then it took 2 years to grow back beyond belief like you'd never seen before. But of course, there were a couple of differences back then. One is we could get away with it because we were a creditor nation then. We had people owed us more money than we owed them. Now, unfortunately, we're a debtor nation.
Well, why does that make such a big difference?
Well, because you can't. One of the things now is Reagan borrowed money, and he was able to do it at no real penalty. I mean, because you could afford the interest and everything like that on the money he borrowed to build up the military, for instance. And it didn't. You could run your debt up and still service it just fine. Nowadays, if the interest rates rise, as I say, back then the interest rate rose as high as 12 to 14% for a while, and at that point, to service the debt, which was small, you could afford it. I mean, as bad as that was. But now, even a rise of 1 or 2% on $22 trillion is, it's devastating. And I mean, it's getting to be one of the largest things. So what the problem is that if you raise the interest rate, the economy will crash. It just will. If you get historically, since the beginning of the country, the treasury bills or whatever it is, or whenever they started, have been around 5%.
Okay.
And now it's 3.22% is the 10-year note.
Mm-hmm.
If it went back to historical levels of around 5%, the market would crash completely, because people would take their money out of these balloon market things that they're in and put it in. I'd rather have the regular 5%, than take a gamble on this. Well, and that's what happens.
Put it into bonds.
Right. They would put it into treasury bonds or any other kind of, and other bonds would have to rise, of course, to pay equals. Corporate bonds and everything would have to keep pace in order to borrow money. And so, if you get a really nice company, not like Sears, but a company that has a super cash flow, that it wants to issue some bonds, they have to compete with the Fed. But so there may be an extra point above the Fed or something like that, and people will buy those. They'll take their money out of the stock market, out of the equities, and put it into the bonds. So anyway, that's why it's the biggest threat to Trump, is because if those rates do go up, he ain't going to be reelected. Yeah,
well, I'm kind of with you. I mean, my only question is that it seems to me like at some point the rates will rise regardless of what the Fed.
No question. You see, that's the point. The Fed has managed to, for 8 years, there was one rate rise in the 8 years of Obama. One, from 0 to whatever it was. But I mean, holding that down, you're suppressing this steam, the boiling water of the economy, and at some point it's going to go. But you're right, at some point, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, I don't understand how they managed to hold it this long. Almost every day goes by that I sit there, is today the Black Swan Day, where it all, because everybody's in debt now.
Right, and since the last show day, we had the 500-point drop, or 600 or 700 point.
Well,
and then another.
What's interesting, of course, is percentage-wise, those drops are not all that significant compared to '87, for instance.
Right.
But still, when you do see a 500 or 800 point swing in the span of a day, up and down, and then up again or whatever, I mean, people, what are you doing? This is rank speculation. This is casino time. Is what this is. Yeah. And when you realize that a lot of that trading, it has to do with the computer guys that have their and they're right next to the computers in Wall Street. They've got a straight wire across the wall because that extra nanosecond that somebody that's down the road can't execute the trade as fast as this. I mean, that's what they do. It's
yeah. Well, I know most of the trades are done with computers and algorithms these days, and so it does create quicker swings and larger swings and
right.
such.
Well, some of those, of course, that's one of the things that we've seen this happen once or twice before, and that's one of the things that the government has done. Another stupid thing that they've done is they put in what do they call them, traps or something. It's something like if the market goes down too fast, it cuts everything off and everything goes out. I forget what they call stopgap, something like that, right? And but of course, that creates another problem. So because if you have that and people literally can't make the trade at any price,
right?
I mean, you think about it. That was one of the things when you talk about the other way with gasoline, for instance, when there's and we're going to talk about this also in a minute about insurance. But what you find is the people that really have to do something are willing to pay the price. But if you stop it, then that person who really wants it gets stopped out of not being able to buy it. Like for instance, when the gasoline prices were capped, then people would you'd be in line with some little old lady who wanted to put a gallon in the thing, and somebody that really had to have 20 gallons would have been able to pay $1, $2 extra to do it, was stopped out from doing it. So anyway, this is interesting. Now, the next thing another diversion we're talking about from the people. One of the things that happens with the news is the real stuff, like the economy and like the Federal Reserve and so forth, gets shunted aside by these little trivial things. And one of them is White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, whatever, likely violated ethics regulations when she posted a photo of her on official White House Twitter account with Kanye West wearing a MAGA hat. Now, apparently, this violated something called the Hatch Act. And of course, I've always said that any act named after a person, that's an emotional response. So let me just see here.
Yeah, because otherwise they'd name it after whatever freaking act it was.
Well, it'd just be it'd be the 1921 whatever
Theft Act, or it would be the.
So anyway, the group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington filed a complaint Friday with the Office of Special Counsel accusing Sanders of violating the Hatch Act. The act forbids federal employees from using their influence, position, work resources, or social media accounts to affect the results of an election. Now, the idea, of course, is that Sarah, who's, I guess she's a federal employee, and she stands there with the guy who has a MAGA, and they claim that this is an attempt to influence.
To use her office to improperly influence the election.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they've just gone crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of their lawsuits, that's insane.
I mean, anything, but I mean, I'm sitting there.
They'll have to pay her.
Huh?
They'll have to pay her.
Pay who?
If they sue her, I mean, the way what they've done is filed some complaint with some committee as opposed
at the Office of Special Counsel.
Right. But what I'm getting at is they didn't have the balls to just sue her.
Oh, right.
In
federal court.
Right. If they think she's done something wrong, then file suit. And then if you lose, you have to pay her attorney's fees.
Right.
The way that Stormy now has to pay
oh my God,
Trump's attorney's fees. It's awesome. I mean,
but they are still going. Horse face.
I know. It's a crazy dog and pony show, but it ends as it should have ended. That is to say, the judge throws out her lawsuit and forces her to pay for the shenanigans.
Yeah. Okay. Next item I've got is this is Elizabeth Warren.
Aha.
This is really fun. One of the funniest things I ever heard was Ben Shapiro was talking about this, and he was laughing so hard he couldn't hardly finish his show because of the way this occurred. I mean, as he said, she basically shot herself. I mean, she thought she was going to make a big to-do about this. Look at me, I'm an Indian, and of course the memes on Facebook and the Twitter. If you see the pictures, I mean.
I have, but I can tell you that there's literally a whole group of people out there who now believe she's an Indian.
No.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is like there's. I think that there's a large swath of the.
Well, the Cherokee Nation poo-pooed.
I know. But see, this is the group that says that you can identify with whatever you want.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute too.
Look, we'll see. I'm with you. I think it's a little bit of insanity when you come down. I wanted to believe. I wanted to, hey, you could. Elizabeth Warren was the only person who stood up to the banks during the bailout situation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I always give her credit for that.
Okay.
But this is. Obviously, I think we have to say what this is. Look, this is a romantic notion that she had about her parents, and she liked the story about her parents.
Right.
And this.
Well, that's what Shapiro said. No, that's what either Shapiro or Adams said. What you should have said was gosh, I was believing my parents.
That's it. You know,
I'm
this is
sorry. Okay.
a story they told her when she was 7 or something.
Right. Why wouldn't I believe it?
That's right. And
you're a little princess.
that's right. You're an
you're
Indian
walking around,
princess.
and
it's Halloween.
And her age, didn't we all have feathers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember my grandmother took me to the Cherokee Nation up in the North Carolina mountains.
And you all had your little bow and arrow.
Absolutely, we had everything. And truth be told, I remember, and I was like 7 or something.
Right.
But I remember going to school and telling somebody that I was part Cherokee for like a day or something until my big brother said, "No, you're not doing that.
No, you're not.
Just you were up there. That's all.
That's right. That's all you.
And he was like, okay, and then that was it. You know, so. But obviously she like harbored that, kept it, cuddled it, and let it grow and bloom inside of her, mixed it in with the recipes, and then of course did you see what about the recipe?
Oh yeah, no, she copied it word for word
from a
soup can or something, or French. Yeah, I mean
that's the telltale killer. It's like okay, and then of course the DNA test. I mean, you know, you look at the percentages and
who doesn't have some?
Well, at that level, all of us do. That's the
really,
whole point.
Look, this is America.
As you know, my Counselor Curtis's mother will speak of her grandmother being black Irish,
right,
and having black eyes and olive skin and stuff.
Right.
So that's just my great grandmother, okay, and so that's a 6% in terms of, you know, that's 4 times her percentage of
right.
You know, so you know, I'm obviously as black as she is Indian,
right?
I guess is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And
well, as I think Shapiro said, she's as much a Cherokee. The Jeep Cherokee is more Cherokee than she.
That was
good. Funny.
That is funny. Because also it was, of course, admitted that the tester didn't have any Indian DNA.
Right.
You know, certainly no Cherokee or Delaware.
And it was still qualified as maybe.
Well,
it
because
appears as though
he used Peruvian, Mexican, and Colombian DNA, sort of a triangulation. Which, of course, those are all intermixed with Europeans. So how are you gonna? You know, factor out that after 10 generations is 1,000 people, and you just no. Well, and then of course what it comes down to is she looks white as the driven snow,
right?
You know, I mean, the concept behind her now assertion is that her family suffered some racial injustice at the hands of the other side of her family. Because of the Indian heritage.
That's what she heard.
Well, I know. That's what I'm saying. Victim me.
Right. You know, maybe her granduncle came in and said, "Yeah, we had to walk upstairs both ways."
Right.
Just whatever, and you know, and this was why we suffered. You know?
Well, yeah. Well, exactly. I mean,
anyway, so much for that.
Well, no, I think that the most telling thing about that whole story is, of course, what I knew was going to happen on day one, which is the Cherokee and the Delaware coming out and saying, "I don't think so." Yeah. She's not one of us.
No.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
Liz.
Now, speaking of this, people who are identifying as something else, this is fascinating. Yesterday, and I think if it was not yesterday, Tuesday, it might have been Monday, a male who identifies as a female won the Women's World Championship cycling event. Rachel McKinnon, a professor at the College of Charleston, won the women's sprint in the 35 to 39 age bracket at the 2018 UCI Masters Track Cycling World Championships in Los Angeles. Now, this is interesting because it says focusing on performance advantage is largely irrelevant because this is a rights issue, says he, she, / that person. We shouldn't be worried about trans people taking over the Olympics. We should be worried that they're about their fairness and human rights instead. So now all of a sudden, I mean, what's interesting is, anybody will tell you this, that let's just see here if I got it. No, there was a thing in there that said even a mediocre male in almost any sport can beat a top performer female. Now, top and when I say mediocre, I mean we're talking about somebody that's
Middle of the road.
huh?
Middle of the road.
Middle of the road, and I mean like in tennis or track or anything.
It's even worse than that in terms of the discrepancy between.
I mean, you look at the people that train all their lives to be sprinters, for instance, or marathoners.
No,
I'm sorry, it doesn't. You're 20 or 30 minutes behind the guys in the
Right.
in the marathon.
There are no sports at which the sexes compete.
I think
directly.
in archery they do. I'll bet you archery,
You're probably right. In fact, and probably shooting.
but archery.
And also, well, I will say this: a woman won the overall long distance endurance race.
Ah, really?
The Moab 240.
Oh yeah.
240 miles through the desert.
Yeah.
She slept like 1 minute over the 12 hours or something, and I mean, just some kind of ridiculous stuff. Now, so okay, but so hey.
But basically, what we're saying is that that this is so anyway. But now what they're saying is that this doesn't matter, and of course,
there's a lot of pushback on this already. I can tell you because there was a woman, there was a dude who became a woman, and entered into MMA.
A dudess.
Well, yeah, and she became a fighter. Okay, and she's just beating the crap out of the other girls. I mean, and not with skill or anything. She was just
Brute strength.
right. And
Testosterone.
it's obvious in that context. You can see because you can see who has the skill and the talent, and you can see who has the brute strength. And we have weight classes and such.
Right.
We break up the men into different weight classes,
Yeah.
and we separate the men from the women because it's not a contest otherwise.
Right.
And the point of this is to have a contest. And the thing about contests, it's very simple. If you know you're going to win the contest, you don't enter. You don't enter.
That's true.
Because it doesn't make, it's a waste of your time.
There's no joy in that.
Exactly. It's just, I don't go to the school where the 10-year-olds are racing and get in the race with them because I'm gonna blow them all away. There's no question. And every sports contest is like that. If you know you're going to win, why even play? And this is one of those areas where people are just going to have to suck it up and realize, look, you can have all the equality you want. You can have marriage. You can have chivalry gone or whatever you want. Okay, but you can't just pretend that this physical structure is different from this physical structure.
You've got to ask yourself, the fallout from this is one of these things that if trans people, let's say, are allowed to go into the women's sports, they'll all go and there'll be no women in it.
Well, what'll happen is the women will have a separate league.
Yeah.
Well, where they will compete, or they'll just keep track of okay. First and second went to those women, and then third, fourth, and fifth went to the genetic women.
Yeah.
And they'll just count that as first, second, and third.
But the market will figure it out. Is what I say. That's the main thing. The market will figure it out. I mean, certainly women that train their whole lives for whatever this is, and find out that suddenly the rules all of a sudden change.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm telling you, sports is going to be the arena where people finally have to realize you just have to recognize.
Well, they haven't realized it here.
No, I know they haven't. But I've seen things like that a few times. I've seen some girls in some track stuff. I've seen some, but the big blowback was the MMA one because it's just not a contest anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to attract any attention if it's not a contest.
Right.
And if it's not going to attract any attention, then it's not a sport anymore. And so you just can't do that. And I mean, there's a lot of things you can mix. You can have ultimate frisbee. I'm a proponent of all the time because you could actually have a mixed team because a girl can learn to throw a frisbee better than a guy can throw a frisbee, even though she might not be able to jump as high or run as fast. She might.
But still, if you are throwing to as you know, like what a quarterback does is to thread the needle.
Right.
To throw. There's people around, and the guy he's throwing to catches it. Same thing with the ultimate frisbee. I can see where the ladies would be very good at targeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe another lady.
That's right, and we do have the crossover in that sport is, I think, much greater than it is in practically any other sport because of that.
I can see that.
But still, you're never going to have the sexes on even playing fields.
No, I mean it's you're in a fool's errand. But it is interesting to see how many people are on the other side saying it doesn't matter anymore. This is focusing on performance advantage is largely irrelevant because this is a rights issue.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and tell that to the girl who got number 2.
Yeah. Right. Exactly right. So if a male of average ability is allowed to compete against elite women and wins, what does that do to the essence of competitive sports? In fact, it destroys the idea of competition and makes sports just another extension of the culture wars, as we just said. Okay, moving along. This is another thing that's kind of interesting. A little market manipulation here. Governor Scott, locally here, directed the state's top insurance regulator to freeze any potential property insurance rate increases for 90 days as homeowners and business people grapple with the massive damage from Hurricane Michael. Now, what's happening, of course, is the damage from the hurricane was massive, billions of dollars, and one of the hardest hit, of course, is our which I'll talk about here in just a second, is the state-backed Citizens Property Insurance Corporation has set up temporary centers in Panama City and Tallahassee to help policyholders with claims. Now, the state, believe it or not, has decided that they want to be in the insurance business in case an insurance company didn't want to take the risk. So the taxpayers will now take the risk, but they've decided to freeze the rates because there are some people now that are going, and it's interesting because we've made some improvements to this house here, and wanted to up the insurance on it, and they said no.
The question is, will they accept pre-existing conditions?
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, my house blowed down and
gone.
It's gone.
In fact, all I own is this slab. I'd like to insure this $2 million house.
Yeah. So anyway, but what it's interesting that the state has decided to cap this stuff, and of course they
right. And I'd like to pay under the cap, please.
Yeah, right. Entire communities have been wiped off the map. Said somebody who said in a statement, "I can't say this enough. The damage is catastrophic. As our neighbors and communities assess the damage and start recovering, the last thing they need to worry about is if their insurance company will be dropped for non-payment." And of course, that's what the deal is. That here you're living in a house, and it blowed away, and so your insurance premium shows up for the month, let's say, and why are you going to pay it?
You're right. Well, but at that point, the damage has already happened, and you were covered during the period. Right. I mean, I would imagine.
Well, again, what's happened is there are discussions about all of this stuff, and it's because some of the damage is still ongoing and so forth. So anyway, I don't know, but it's just interesting the figuring that about somewhere between $2 and $4.5 billion, is what it's going to be cost to replace this stuff, and a lot of people are going to get hurt. Anyway, it's just interesting that the state decided to step in, as usual, and say no mas for you, and you don't know what the ramifications are going to be.
Well, it's insane that the state is ever involved in insurance. We've seen that they did that flood situation where they tried to cover everybody who had a river house.
Yeah.
And it's just insane. And it sounds well-meaning, but what a boondoggle. I mean, if the insurance companies whose entire existence is to evaluate risk and determine the cost of that risk, and then offer you a product which mitigates that cost, in competition with other people doing exactly the same calculations. And you're going to step in and just willy-nilly decide how much you want to give people.
Well, this is one of the reasons I've said that one of the horrible offices that there I think exist in all 50 states are the insurance commissioners. That bureaucracy. What you don't need the. One of the things you can't do, of course, is to buy insurance across state lines, at least on medical insurance. But I mean, this is stupid. The market figures all this stuff out very nicely. And one of the things I thought was fascinating in a way was if you're going to build your house on the seashore, if you're going to self-insure or whatever, you're going to take the risk. That's number one. But number two, did you see the house that stood?
Oh, the architecture guy?
Yeah.
I didn't actually see the picture, but
the picture was amazing. This was on Mexico Beach, and he paid about an extra $100,000 or $200,000 to ensure that his house was bulletproof. I mean, it was hurricane proof. And when you see the aerial photo or the one from the road, everything around him is flattened, right down to the thing. His stands alone. It is completely no roof damage, no nothing. The only thing that was damaged was the stair that led up to where the house was. And it was designed to rip off, so that it wouldn't tear anything else. And so that he had to actually get another ladder in order to get back. But nothing was destroyed.
What was it shaped differently from other houses?
It was slightly shaped. No, he shaped. They did the roof in a way so that the wind wouldn't catch it.
Okay.
But basically, it was reinforced concrete. The whole house was reinforced concrete with steel, with rebar and everything. Yeah. That was number one. And it was, I think they said it would cost him about an extra $200,000, which is more than an insurance policy, but still, he wanted it to be standing. Yeah. Of course, he lost his electricity, so I don't know what else is going on. But still, the point is, when you see this picture, it's not that a house couldn't be built.
Yeah.
And he was wealthy enough to do it. He had repaired to his home in the mountains or something during the hurricane. So, but it was interesting that he had built this to withstand 250-mile-an-hour winds.
Whoa.
Yeah. So.
Damn.
Yeah. So, and it did. And it was up on stilts.
Yeah.
And what was interesting, when you do see, interestingly enough, not actually in Mexico Beach, but in various places where the hurricane wasn't quite as bad, and you go down the beach road there, all the houses that are up on stilts actually survived.
Did pretty well.
Did pretty well.
Well, yeah. Well, as we know, it's the water that really brings the force there.
Right.
That's the devastating part. And so if you get out of that, the way of that.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened. So I mean, it was interesting. It is disappointing, of course, that they still are missing all kinds of people. They don't know what.
Yeah, I've heard like 1,000
people that haven't been accounted for yet, which is
a lot. I unfortunately do expect some more deaths to be reported because of the way that the storm blew up so fast overnight.
Yeah,
Anybody who grew up around this coast would have reasonably believed that storm was going to hit as a Category 2 the day before.
Right.
And as we know, as we say around here, 1 or 2, that's a party. You're fine.
Right.
You get some booze and some candles and stuff, and you're good. If it's a 3 or above, you get out of there.
Yeah. And
obviously, this was above.
Yeah.
So.
Well, when it hit, it was bad. Okay, so moving along. Let's see. Oh, this is another thing. We're hearing from Donna Brazile.
Okay.
Donna Brazile is a spokesperson for the Democrat Party. She was the one. Yeah. She was the one that was passing the little notes to Hillary. In the questions in advance.
She was the chairman.
Chairman
DNC or whatever. Admitted.
So anyway, but she had something to say about Kanye West.
Yeah, well, she's black.
I know. So she called him an insult and an embarrassment. She said, bad stereotypes about black people during his recent White House visit. I thought it was another episode of The Kardashians featuring Donald Trump. Of course, he's married to a Kardashian.
Yeah.
Kanye is.
It was an episode of The Kardashians.
Right, exactly. Right. Embarrassing. That's the best I'm going to say. Brazile said, the political analyst's response came 3 days after the rapper visited Trump in the Oval Office and delivered a bizarre rant. Now, this is written from it wasn't bizarre at all. That included comments on abolishing the 13th Amendment, which bans slavery. And they went all over that. And of course, it wasn't anything like that. And
she's just chiming in on the side.
Oh yeah, no, she's dumping in. Brazile, who on Thursday tweeted that Kanye West has set us back 155 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No.
Going slavery again.
It's what it is. I understand you can buy slaves today.
She questioned his mental abilities and said he needs to go get some help.
Right. Well, we talked about this. This is just part of they turned on him, and she obviously got a call, and they said, "Listen, we need you to go out."
Well, she's for a fact that on the talk shows, she's on the Rolodex of people.
Oh, yeah.
She's on the short list.
Sure.
Because she always has something to say.
Yeah.
And it can be
it's a party line thing.
Yeah, that's right. So, okay. Next to last thing here. Ecuador has restored Julian Assange's internet phone and visitation.
Really?
Yes. They let him all back in. And,
Nice.
Yeah. He's lived in the embassy for over 6 years, had his phone and internet access taken away in March.
I wonder how much space he has.
I don't know. And evidence, he had a written commitment to the government. He said he wasn't going to make any political statements, that he said not to issue statements that might interfere with other states. So he wasn't allowed to see much of his legal team, no visitors, no nothing. Anyway, that's all. Most of all that's been lifted now, and he's kind of back to normal. So maybe we'll see some more WikiLeaks. I don't know.
Very interesting.
Well, what's the tragedy, of course, is that there are still people here, Jeff Sessions and others, that absolutely want, and Hillary was another one. They want him shot on sight.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this is, he's damaged. He has put lives in danger. Blah blah blah.
Sure. Well, it's easy for them to believe that, and it's true to some extent. I mean, he did do a giant dump of intelligence stuff, but
of course, one of the things when you say put lives in danger, you send 5,000 troops all armored to the hilt into some Afghan territory. They're in danger.
I was going to cut back.
Okay.
What I was going to say was, look, what he did was he revealed a massive government secret CIA spying, NSA spying program.
Right.
Massive, okay? That we would not know about, okay? That's the definition of the purpose of the press. So the fact that he put some lives at risk to do that is perfectly acceptable. It's part of the deal. You're going to get that because there has to be some cutback against the government's absolute power. And all it is information. All he did was reveal information. It's not like he launched any missiles or anything. So from my perspective, the guy deserves a place in the Journalism Hall of Fame.
I'm with you.
And
I'm totally with you.
I can't believe that he can't get asylum in some sort of...
well, go visit with, what's his name in Russia?
Right, and on the speaking tour, isn't there an international speaking tour that doesn't involve the United States?
Well, no.
Well, right, I mean, that's the
no.
thing.
In fact, the answer to your question is no.
I went to Japan, Burundi, and I don't even where you go. China, Mongolia. I don't even know. I guess there isn't. So
no,
so they don't.
I had an audience of yaks.
Yeah.
In Mongolia.
Yeah, that's right. My tour took me to Yemen and Iran.
So anyway, I thought that was good, and as I say, the idea that he's that people consider him, it's interesting because there was a story. It's on a documentary on the Pentagon Papers, Daniel Ellsberg, and of course they wanted to lynch his butt.
Well, sure.
I mean, but it was, when that came out, it was obvious to his face that there was this horrible cover-up by people who to this day are still alive and kicking in on the speaking tour. The people that should be.
Well, that's the way it always happens. The
winners write the rules.
They deny. They're like, no, that didn't happen. No, they didn't. Oh my God, somebody saw it. There's a recording. Watch out. And then they're the devil. They're the great accuser. Yeah. And then it's, oh yeah, okay, they're right, and I was wrong. So.
Yeah. Well, that'll be interesting. Now, I've got one other thing that I picked up because it was kind of interesting. 2 Mynmar fighter pilots, were killed in separate crashes due to heavy fog Tuesday, said, and they killed a child or something.
Wait, Miramar or Mynmar? Like Miramar, California, fighter town?
No,
USA?
Mynmar, the country.
Okay.
The country over there next to Laos and all that other stuff. Okay. My first question was, what are they doing with an Air Force? What are you talking about? I mean, what?
We bombed Bali.
Whatever.
We bombed
Yeah,
the crap out of
like,
Bali.
what are you doing with an Air Force, jets, armed that, and so then I went and looked it up. I did not realize this, but the country has 53 million people. Now it's basically autocratic rule. So but I mean they're spending money on jets and stuff. Fighter jets.
Well,
Poor visibility cost one jet to fly into a telecommunications tower near the Air Force Base, and it says the crashes are the latest aviation catastrophes to blight the country's Air Force. Another one pilot died in a crash. In June, Chinese-built Y-8 carrying military personnel and their families plunged into the close sea there after taking off, killing 122 people, 15 of whom were children. I didn't realize this, but the F-7 is a Cold War-era fighter jet, a Chinese-made variant of the Soviet Union's MiG-21. But as I say, apparently it's a pretty good-sized country, 53 million people or whatever. That's like the size, almost the size of England or Great Britain, UK or whatever. I think there's 61 million or
something like that.
But I didn't. But the one thing when I was doing the WikiLeaks or Wiki whatever it was, not WikiLeaks, but the pages, that you could look up on
Wikipedia,
was that the difference between the rich and the poor in that country is far outstrips this country. I mean, the rich are really rich, and there's only a couple of them, and the rest of the country is destitute. And of course, it's controlled, even though they have a parliamentary, whatever it is, upper and lower house. Not really. When all is said and done, it's ex-military people that are running the show over there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, of course, that's where a lot of that stuff has been with. I don't know. Some tribe has been trying. I think it's in the area where they were genociding some group of people that had to flee into Bangladesh or some other place, or I forget what it was, but there was some uproar. I don't know if this was the same place, but the bottom line is apparently it's not what you call a real free country.
Right.
But I'm just thinking that all the the 95% of the people that are living in abject poverty, if that is right, I'm not sure, but are paying for these jets.
Yeah, right. They're loving it. And they're flying over. Right.
Who are they going to fight? Of course, that.
Well, I think this is probably. There are so many countries around the world these days that are playing with their new high-tech weaponry, and you know what happens? They create a bureaucracy which pays for the weaponry and also get a little bit for themselves on the side.
Bit.
Yeah. And so that's part of how they're rich, I'm sure. So and then the jets, they get to tout, look, we have a defense force that we're paying for, and it costs us
bragging rights,
billions of dollars or whatever, and so miss a billion here, miss a billion there. Who cares?
Right.
So.
Well, they're I forget. I was looking up their GDP, but their per capita GDP is apparently around $6,000, which I think is really high.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how many people that's with, but I was kind of surprised. Anyway, I didn't go through all the figures. I wanted to find out how big and how important this country was. But the main thing was that apparently it's a destitutely poor country. And I don't know how they get that GDP according to Wiki pages or whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw a figure today that said that half of all the people on the earth live on less than $5 a day.
I saw that, but it also has said that you also said in the last decade or 20 years or something that 5 billion people or so. No, it's more than that.
No, not more than that.
No. There, a number of billion of people have been lifted into the middle class.
Yeah, like 1.5 billion.
Okay, have been lifted.
Yeah, it's been a huge number, and out of poverty.
Out of poverty, right?
Yeah, the numbers are staggering in terms of the wealth creation, and that's the kind of thing when I hear about people talking about climate change and what we have to do to cut back on the economy. I think, don't you realize there's people literally starving to death right now, literally starving to death right now. Not in our country, but in other places, and it's because of the trickle-down effect of our wealth reaching out to those places that prevents some of those people from dying. I was watching a little documentary on one of what they called the last tribe. And it was this sort of indigenous Congo people that still hunt with bow and arrow, and they hunt baboons and monkeys and stuff, and they go out there, right? Well, so they're doing this report, and they got some pictures there, and you can see them there with their bows and arrows, and the monkeys and stuff, and their Cincinnati Reds T-shirt. Okay. Now, here's the reason that the guy is wearing a Cincinnati Reds T-shirt. It's good. It's a good shirt, and it's cheap. You know, somebody gave it to him. A box probably showed up, or some guy who was out there tromping around from America was like, here, you can have my Reds T-shirt. You know, and it was better than anything they can make out of freaking woven palm fronds, all right? Because that's what the other people are making.
Yeah.
And you know, and there's nothing wrong with wearing woven palm fronds, but the amount of technology that goes into a Cincinnati Reds T-shirt is enormous. I mean, it's ridiculous. The cotton has been grown in 100-year-old stuff, and the techniques and the weaving and the form and the stitching and the double stitching and all that kind of stuff, which makes this T-shirt a better product, even though it's not traditional or whatever. That's just how it happens, and that's how the wealth gets distributed, and that's why people are going to be lifted out of poverty if we can continue to embrace capitalism.
Right. Well, it is interesting. You know, I had not seen that particular documentary, but what I have always seen is when they go through and they film these poor, thatch hut communities, and you're walking down the street, they all have something like that.
Right.
T-shirts.
Yeah,
I think,
exactly.
where did you get those T-shirts?
You can't beat it. A fanny pack or something.
Yeah.
I mean, the man
these are kids that
hours.
are barefoot.
Right.
You know, and the mud street.
Right.
And they've got on, like you say, some kind of
a backpack. You can't. The man hours it would take to create something like that out of palm fronds is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you don't do it. And so anyway.
It's always interesting.
Well, all right. That's all you got.
Yeah, I got that. I'm done.
Okay, we're almost done here. I think that's pretty much everything. You got the other things that I did. Oh, one more small thing. Sort of a sad note or whatever. But another accident turned into a vehicular manslaughter homicide. This poor guy up in, I think, Long Island, or was it Thomas Murphy, 59, leaving a golf course with a few martinis in him, plowed into a Boy Scout troop.
Ooh!
Yeah, and one of the kids died. And so in our current society, the level of harm dictates the level of causation and punishment.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the guy was thinking or how sorry he is or anything.
In other words, if he'd crashed into a tree or a ditch,
right,
no problem. I mean, other than the deep.
Right, and he could have died.
Right.
And so, but the kicker is, here's the real kicker. Evidence has come forward that one of his friends offered him a ride home and he refused. Yeah. So the grand jury charged him with aggravated vehicular homicide because
why did they charge the friend?
Yeah, right.
I'm serious. The friend should have grabbed his keys. He was
the sober one.
No, I'm serious. He was the sober guy, and it was his fault. It was his fault.
Right.
He goes to jail.
How come they can't figure this out?
I
was going to say the car manufacturer, but
no, I'm telling you, it's the friend.
Right. Yeah. He was right there. Could have stopped it all.
Could have stopped it.
Yeah.
Could have stopped it. That's right. He was the consummate cause or whatever.
For him letting him take that thing. Yeah, that's a typical legal argument. Well, anyway, so there's that. So watch out. Accidents.
I mean, and of course, these are golfers. Okay, probably a private club.
Yeah.
The Boy Scout guys or the parents should go for a wrongful death on the golfer who didn't take the keys.
Oh yeah, and the golf course, right? Too.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, for some type of windy road, or there'll be all kinds of stuff.
I love it.
But well, so anyway, all right. Well, hey, thanks y'all for tuning in. We appreciate it. It looks like the stream got cut a little bit, but I'll have a nice pristine copy up here for your viewing pleasure quickly.
Coming back Sunday.
Yep, 4 o'clock on
o'clock.
Sunday. I swear we're going to solve these streaming problems soon.
Yeah, I got to call up our. They really upset me because this modem just cuts out at random time, and it'll just come back on. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes it cuts out for a minute or two, sometimes for 10 minutes.
Yeah, my poltergeist is thriving.
Yeah, no, that's the problem.
Thriving over here.
Yeah, that's right.
Something got in all the computers now, so. Alright. We'll see you.